this is an example of what I'm about to make. So this is made with a slab. I've put texture into it, rolled it around itself, scored and slipped it together, and then pinched the bottom to make the little feet. And then I smoothed out the rim, and I pushed it out a little bit, so it made it a little more bulbous shaped. So first step would be to make a slab. So how many of you have learned the technique of throwing a slab? Some of you have. Okay. So throwing a slab, basically, you can do this when you're working with making bigger slabs. I usually do it on the floor, but since this is smaller, I'll do this on the table. But it's pushing or throwing the clay down at an angle. So if I do this toward myself and then I flip it over and keep going, it will start to stretch itself out. If I notice a spot on the table's not the best. I would probably prefer to do this on the wedging table because it's more porous of a surface and my clay won't stick. If I notice it starts to get wet in one spot, I'll move over to a different spot because where it starts to get wet, what happens? It sticks more right there in that spot. So keep that in mind, and then you want to keep in mind the shape. So if I want it to be, excuse me, if I want it to be more of a longer shape like a rectangle, then I could just keep going this way. But if I wanted it to be more circular, then I would maybe turn it and also go back and forth, you know, in both directions. But I want it to be kind of a rectangle. So I would keep doing this, see how it's stretching itself out gradually. And then you can continue that till it's the thickness you want. But the key is not to throw it down. So you're kind of like going at that real angle when you do this. Okay, so that's a technique that's really good, no tools needed for throwing a slab. And it might take a little practice, but it's a good one to have in your tool belt. And then the other would be rolling pin. I have this one that I just got that's new. Try it out. And then I have other rolling pins that are on the wedging table. So you can always roll it to get it to the thickness that you want. What's the thickness in general for something this size that you would want your slabs to be?
1/4 inch.
Yeah, about 1/4 inch. So you can write that down. 1/4 inch thick. If you roll a slab, it's a good idea to flip it over partway through and roll it on both sides. And that will help prevent your slab later from wanting to curl up. If you're making flat slabs, we're actually making these into something round, so it won't matter quite as much. So I've got my slab about to the thickness I want. And if you are worried about it sticking, I have pieces of canvas that you can put underneath your clay that are backed by the slab roller. You could also just put like a piece of newspaper under it or something, just something that would prevent it from sticking. I'm going to cut this into kind of a rectangle. Put something underneath it. Because when I start pressing stuff in, it's going to want to stick to the table. So that would probably be wise. Put something underneath it. And you can just start doing texture with whatever you want to use or find. I just have a texture bin that you're welcome to use. If you have flat things you're trying to use, I would recommend putting them on and then rolling over them. Bigger things like this you could just press in. And you can do whatever you want with this. Experiment, have fun with it. And then I'm going to stand this up. I'm going to score it, and you can use a needle tool to score, or you can use one of these forks. I'll give you guys one of these that you can have and keep in your locker. And if you score, make sure your score lines should be very rough and crisscross. You don't want to see wherever you score, you don't want to see any flat areas of clay, because that is where you're really likely to trap what? Air. Yeah, really likely to trap air. The little cups you brought in, that's what this is for slip. I just took a couple pieces of bone dry clay and added some water to them right before we went to the assembly, and it's all dissolved. And maybe I'll tilt this up like this and hold it. Then the third part about scoring and slipping is to make sure that you add pressure. So I'm going to put those on top of each other, and then from the inside with it sitting just like that, kind of supporting it, I'm going to press that together pretty firmly. That's a part of scoring and slipping that people a lot of times forget about, is that pressure. And that pressure is really pretty important, because if you just kind of lightly set things together, they're going to come apart, or you're not going to squeeze out the air bubbles. So when you squeeze together, when you score and slip, it pushes out any air bubbles. A lot of times you can like hear them popping and coming out when you push the clay together. Okay, on the inside of that, which you can see the seam on the inside, I would probably blend that. This is kind of an aesthetic choice. If you wanted to make something like this that you'll use to eat out of or drink out of, you definitely would want the inside very smooth. If it's just going to be like a decorative jar base or something like for pencils, or then you could leave that if you want to. Scoring and slipping by itself is enough. You don't have to blend that. So that will be a decision for you. Same thing on the outside. I could leave that edge like that if I want to, or I could blend it. If I blend that, then I would have to probably redo my texture right there, because it'll smooth it out. But that's a choice for you that you can make. I think I maybe will just leave it. I'm gonna leave it. Okay, then to do the bottom, you can decide how, if I did this in 3 feet, 3 legs, you could do it in 3 or you could do it in 4. But you basically, to do 3, are going to take and wrap your hands around it like that and kind of squeeze it in to be like a triangle. Okay? And then I'll kind of push that triangle like it's falling in on itself. And just kind of keep going. Slowly kind of stretching the clay out here. And pushing that together. Is that visible on there? Mm-hmm. If it's upright like that, you can kind of tell. And push that together and really pinch these. Okay, and then I can smooth this out here. If I put this all together and I still have this gap at the bottom, I could take a little ball of clay and I could fill that in right there and blend that together. Okay, and take a little time to smooth that out. And then stand it up. The inside now, you can see the seams. If you're wanting to use this for something that would be functional, that you'll eat out of, and you want to make sure that it won't leak through those cracks or anything, I would take coils and fill in with coils. You guys that did mugs in Ceramics 1, remember doing a coil around the bottom edge of your mug on the inside? So I would fill those in so the inside is more of a smooth surface. If you're not as worried about that, you're not worried about this holding liquid, then you could just leave it like that and let it dry. Okay. Next would be the rim, I guess. Okay. So take the rim and make sure it's nice and smooth. You can use just your fingers for doing this. And it really is a natural focal point. So you want to spend time on lip rims to make sure they look nice. Because your eye is drawn there, and if it looks sloppy at all, it's really noticeable. So take a little time to make that lip rim rounded out. Whenever you cut a slab, you always get that really sharp edge, so you want to take that off on both sides, get that smoothed out really well. This one, remember I told you I pushed it out from the inside? I literally just took my hand on the inside and stretched out the clay. I'm going like this on the inside, just stretching it out. You could do that if you want to. Play around with the shape.